Jeremiah 30 and 31. Well, this is a very busy time, not only in the book of Jeremiah, but in the story of Israel. So as we go through these important chapters to come, especially 30 through 33 of Jeremiah, what I want to be able to do is set up the picture of how the New Testament will describe very important words like salvation, atonement, and even new covenant. And that's all coming here in Jeremiah 30 through 33. But today is 30 and 31. Let's just mention again where we are. Israel has been promised to be in captivity or a time of desolation for 70 years. That'll be 586 through 516. However, there's a term that we're going to be using, and theologians will use it both in the story of Israel and in describing the end times, that we call the exile. The exile is a theological term, not a textual term, because the 70 years is not really technically going to be included as the entire meaning of the word exile. How do we know that? Well, as we listen to the text today, we'll make sense of that. So after the 70 years, Israel's desolation is over. But how do we know when Israel's exile is over? I'd recommend by listening to Jeremiah 30 and 31, we'll start to understand that. 30 verse 2, "For behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will bring back from captivity." So the idea of coming back into the land beyond just the 70 years idea, but that will come back from captivity, and I will cause them to return to the land that I have given to their fathers, that they may possess it. So until Israel literally possesses the land, I'd recommend this time of exile will not be thought of as being over. 30 verse 7, "For that day is great, that none and none like it. It will be the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it." Now again, this term saved is often overused in the New Testament in the sense that we think of individual salvation, but in the Old Testament, as we come to this idea of the end times, the idea of being saved is a corporate idea. That again, Israel itself, coming out of this idea of exile, that will be what we call being saved. And so let's hang on to that idea in the New Testament especially. In Luke 24, these two men will meet Jesus, the post-resurrection Jesus, and they will say to him, not knowing who he is, "We thought he was the one who would redeem Israel or save Israel." But notice again, that's a corporate idea, not individual at that point. 30 verse 8. "Foreigners shall no longer enslave them, but they shall serve the Lord their God." And listen to how this ends. "They shall serve the Lord their God." That would be Yahweh. How do we know when the exile is over? Israel will serve Yahweh. And then notice this interesting phrase, "and David their king." Well, David is long gone, so who is David their king? I'd recommend that what we have is again this idea of a Messiah slot, or someone who will be in a physical place of Yahweh. Yahweh is not a physical being, they know that. So when it comes to who does Israel serve in the end, yes, Yahweh, but there's also this idea of someone who will represent Yahweh. That's what David did, of course, during his reign. But now someone will take that slot, as it were. I'd recommend this answers looking way ahead in Hebrews 11:26, where it says that Moses served Christ, or he esteemed the reproaches of Christ greater than the reproaches of Egypt. Well, of course, Moses didn't know who Christ was, but in the New Testament, the word Christ is often standing in for Messiah. So this would be the way of speaking of the Messiah. Of course, David is dead, but this would be a slot to be filled in by a human person. And in this case, of course, we know that will be Jesus in the future. But an interesting use of the word David there, and this idea of binitarianism, that someday Israel will serve two beings, not just one, but actually two. We've also, or already seen in 30 verse 11, this idea, "For I am with you, says the Lord, to save you. Yet I will not make a complete end of you." Remember how we have spoken of this idea of the you As we stand here, Jeremiah says, preparing to go into Israel, God will someday save us, or this plural you. But that you is actually not the person hearing the word, but this will be up ahead in verse 31:17. There is hope in your future, says the Lord, that your children shall come back to their own border. So the you in this discussion is not the person hearing Jeremiah, but the children of Jeremiah's people and the grandchildren. Well, a couple of more things that show up in this fascinating text. 30:14, all your lovers have forgotten you. Who else could those lovers be but, comparing back to 8:2, the gods that these people have errantly worshipped? Those lovers, the ones they have loved in the heavens, the gods that were created, will be forgotten, because this new time period will be a time of serving Yahweh and not created Elohim. One more point, this is all in chapter 30. 30:21. Their nobles shall be from among them, and their governor shall come from their midst. Then I will cause him to draw near, that he shall approach me. Very importantly, understand that when we talk about atonement language in the Old Testament and well into the New Testament, that is language not of salvation. Atonement, remember back in Leviticus, was not a discussion of how to be right with God, but how to draw near to God. And so there will be this time period, as it's described in the end, not only when God's people will become loyal to Yahweh and loyal to his Messiah, but also a time of approaching Yahweh. And that will always draw what we'll call atonement language in the Old Testament, and it will also be in the New Testament. So as we look into next time, let's do chapter 31. Even though that was our reading this time, let's use this text or this video just to introduce our next one, in which we talk about chapters 31 through 33. We would expect to hear some kind of language of atonement, where a person needs to be cleansed, ritually purified as they approach Yahweh, especially during this period in the end when God's people will once again become faithful.